are listening to the Thornapple Valley Church podcast. Thank you for joining us. Our hope is for you to be encouraged and to connect with God during this message. If you'd like to know more about Thornapple Valley Church, visit tvcweb.com.
Well, good morning, everybody. So good to see you all. Love you. I was just standing back there thinking, I love this church. I love this church family. I love what God has done over the years. I just feel so rich to be a part of it. And hey, hello to everybody in Middleville. Love you guys so much. And in Delton, such an amazing group. I don't know if you know this, but the Delton campus at TVC is the Pentecostal campus of TVC. I mean, you go there, their worship, man. I mean, they're loud and rowdy, and sometimes I get a little nervous, actually, you know. Just good. Love you guys. And everybody joining us online, welcome as well. So we've been in this series called Made for More, and this is week number 5, and we've been talking about this subject from the New Testament book of Ephesians, which is a great book. And if you have not read it, I strongly recommend that you read it through and just soak it in, because there's such good stuff in there. And we've been looking, as we go through the book of Ephesians, at this subject of, you know, the more that God has made us for. What does that look like? What does that mean? How does that work? And it's interesting because I was asked to give the first talk of this series. So a month ago, you know, I spoke the first message on it. And in my conversations with people since then around that, it's fascinating to me because it seems like we all have very similar feelings. It's like we're busy. Our lives are full. Crazy busy. We are not looking for more in our lives. But we can't avoid this sense that there must be something more. Something in us goes, I don't even know what it is, but there must be something more for my life. I feel like I was made for more. And it's true, we don't want to get to the end of our days and look back and go, well, I guess the major theme of my life was consumption. Just taking care of me, just what made me feel good, just all the stuff coming my way. We want to get to the end of our days and say, it wasn't just about the next meal that I was going to eat and my excitement around that new restaurant or around the next Netflix series I was going to binge or the next cool vacation I was going to go on. That I was there, I was meant, really, you could say it this way, you were meant to impact the world. Not just consume of it, but to make a difference in the world. Now, this is just my opinion, but now here we are in chapter 5 of Ephesians, and you can open there if you'd like. I'm going to be referencing it on and off. I think chapter 5 really speaks to this whole idea. Not so much in the very specific directives that it gives, and it does a bunch of that. You read chapter 5 and you feel like, what was the topic of chapter 5? It's like so many different directives. There's a lot of do this and don't do this kind of things, and it's a fascinating read. But to me, the overarching message of those things is something that's very obvious. And so I made the decision as I looked at this, I knew I was going to talk this week on chapter 5, that I would do this from a higher level perspective. And so I'm going to make it as simple as possible because, well, all my life people have said to me, you're simple, Jeff. I don't know if you know that or not, but you're simple. And so I'm going to make it, and thank you for those of you who didn't say amen out loud, all right? Someone like, I've been telling my wife that for years. That man is simple. Well, I am, okay? I admit it. So what I read when I look at Ephesians chapter 5, I think the overarching message has to do with what I would call heart posture. And by that I mean the state of your heart or the attitude of your heart about what's going on the inside as you face the struggles and the joys and the frustrations and the temptations and all the things that come at you in everyday life. Of course, we live in a world where modern media drives us to focus primarily on things external. Have you noticed that? I mean, how often do you see or hear an advertisement that comes across to you about what's going on the inside of you? It's all about what's happening on the outside. Your makeup, your hair, your physique, your clothes, your possessions, your car, if you have the right car, if you look cool. It's all about those things on the outside. It's really interesting. But Paul here, the person who wrote the book of Ephesians, who penned the words anyhow, inspired by the Holy Spirit, he focuses, he says, especially now as we look at chapter 5. Before he gets into some of this stuff like don't do this and all that, he starts out like very strongly. First. It needs to be what's going on the inside. What's happening in your heart. And of course, you know this, but you can look one way on the outside. You can look really good on the outside, but not be good on the inside. Would anybody agree with that? All right, thank you for this side over here. I love you guys. I want to love you guys. You can look good on the inside, but not be good on or good on the outside, but not be good on the inside. Would you agree with that? It's true. I think all of us have at least some level of a poker face, right? Some of us don't have much of one, but all of us do that because, we hide stuff. We keep stuff from other people. I mean, this happens. Have you ever had a time where you walked up to somebody? Maybe you did it in the lobby at the church, whatever campus you're at, or somewhere else. You saw somebody, you were like, I haven't seen them in a while. Like, hey, how you doing? And what do they say? They always say, great, I'm doing good. And their face is smiling and they look good. But then you look at what is commonly called the windows of the soul. You look at their eyes and you go, I don't think you're doing that good. You don't say it out loud, of course. But you understand that what they look like on the outside and what's really happening may be two entirely different things. And you don't say to them, I don't think you look horrible. That's not appropriate, really. You think it, you don't say it, and the reason you don't say it is you understand why they're doing it. We put the poker face on about what's going on the inside because we don't want to expose it to the whole world. We don't want everybody to see that we're kind of wrecked these days or we're depressed or dealing with a low-grade depression we can't seem to shake, and so we just tell everybody we're doing great. The only trouble is, you can look at that stuff inside and go, I don't like you. Now you get down there and you stay down there and you shove it and kick it in and push it and shut the door in the back room of your heart and keep it out of the way. Don't let anybody know about it. I'm not going to let you. I don't want to think about you or see you again. And the problem, of course, with that is that it's still in there. And you know the saying, right? If you squeeze anything hard enough, what's inside comes out. And I got news for you in case you didn't know this. Life is going to squeeze you hard. And if what's inside you is a mess, it ain't going to be pretty when it comes out. Come on, anybody know what I'm talking about? This is the kind of the reality of how it works. It's still there. Come on, husbands and wives, just answer this question. You ever had your husband or wife come up to you and they have a gentle, kind look on their face, but they say, could we talk for a minute? And you hear the death bells sounding in the background. And you're about to get mauled by the bear. Doesn't matter if it's your husband or wife. I'll be honest with you, this is something I've struggled with for years because I'm one of those people, I don't know why, this is just a wiring thing with me, but when something works on me in some way and I get frustrated or concerned or whatever, my go-to emotion is anger. Anybody know what I'm talking about in here? Some of you are like, dang right, I know what you're talking about. It's just kind of how I'm built. I just go to anger very quickly. But the weird thing is I'm also wired that I want to resolve things whenever they come up if somebody offends me or something, I want to resolve it not next week. I want to resolve it right now. Anybody wired like that? I want to get it done. I want to get it over with. So I'll go to my wife sometimes and it's like she's learned about me. And I'll be like, can we talk a second? and she's like, no. And I'm like, what? Why? We just need to talk. I just want to talk about this thing. I'm not denying that I want to talk about something. But she realizes that in the state my heart is in right now, what's going on the inside of me is I don't want to talk. I want to ventilate. I want to let her have it. Come on. You all know what I'm talking about. And she is smart enough to know. I don't know. I'm like standing there like, why? How is it that you're reading me? Maybe it's that she sees the club hidden behind my back in one hand, a knife in the other. I don't know. But I'm there. I'm ready to go after her when I'm saying I want to work it out. And she just says, we can talk about this another time. Later, when you get your insides. See, this is the problem is that when your insides are a mess, when you get squeezed, it's not going to be pretty. Whether you like it or not, what's inside you is what is going to come out. And it is the state of your heart. You could say it this way: it will rule. And this is true for all of us. Too often, though, you and I, we're spending all this energy and effort fiddling on the outside. We're trying to get ourselves in shape and eat right and do all, and those things are all good. But first, I don't even know how to make this clear. This is a central theme of this little talk that I'm giving today. First, you got to make sure your heart's doing okay. And so often we're just so busy with all this external crap around us and how we look and how people think about us and all that stuff. And then what happens is because we got, we're messed up inside, is we end up damaging people instead of bringing life. The Apostle Paul, as he penned these words, he certainly understood this because he'd been both the perpetrator of this, his wounded, broken heart had damaged people, and he'd been damaged by people with wounded and broken hearts. And so he enters the chapter where he's going to give lots of specific, what I would call like even almost rules or do's and don'ts. This is sin, this is not sin, that type of thing. First, though, he hits on what matters most. And I want you to see this. This is verses 1 and 2. And so he starts out in verse 1. He says, "Follow God's example, therefore, as dearly loved children, and walk in the way," say the next two words out loud, "of love." Walk in the way of love. Just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. In other words, he says, you're going to need to do the right things and not do the wrong things and all that. But first, don't forget what this is all about. This is not about rule following. Being a follower of Jesus is not about making sure you do all the right things and don't do the wrong things. It starts with your heart. And it is about how you love people. And Paul makes this crystal clear here. It's about God knows how easily you and I can lose sight of the stuff that really matters and get things all twisted around. And so before he jumps into any kind of do's and don'ts and all that, he addresses the heart. I mean, look at this one more time. He says it this way: walk in the way of love. And you can say, well, what the heck is walking in the way of love? Well, he explains it. Just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us. In other words, Christ put us above himself. And so Paul says, before you get too worked up about the things you do or don't do, you remember that you are called first to have a heart that loves others above yourself. You could say it this way: you first. You have a you first heart. Before you do all this other stuff, you have a you first heart. Because when we don't have that, we get in trouble. This is especially true for us religious people. Now, some of you, you're here because of a good-looking girl, or somebody invited you, or whatever your reason is, and you're not a religious person. But for those of us who are religious people, we go to church on a regular basis and all that. He's reminding us, because we need to hear this. I mean, come on. Some of you have a lifetime of church because your parents. Anybody ever been in church where it felt like it was more about how you looked and the rules you followed than what was going on in your heart? Anybody know what I'm talking about? A lot of you felt that in churches. It became all about the rules, the do's, the don'ts, and everybody better look good. And this happens to us. And then we miss sensing the love of God in the church even. Let me give you an example of this, because in verse 3, he starts right in with what I'd call the very specific do's and don'ts. And here's what he says. He says, "But among you there must not be even a hint of," let's say the next two words out loud, "sexual immorality." Some of you are like, no, I don't even want to say that. He says there must not be a hint of that among you, or any kind of impurity or greed, because these are improper for God's holy people. Now, clearly, he's not fudging on what's right and wrong. He is saying, in effect, guys, the right way to do your life, sex inside of marriage with your mate. Sex inside of marriage, that is where it is intended to be. This is black and white. You don't have to ask questions about whether this is, what base can you go to, or I mean, no, it's inside of marriage, okay? And he's clear on that. It's black and white. But see, this is what's interesting to me. is that he tells us before he says this, you make sure you check your heart and you love with the love of God. Because I'll tell you what so many people do is they build a superior attitude towards other people. It's like they look at a verse like this and they're Christians. They go, well, I'm not having an affair with anybody, but that guy, he went out on his wife and they treat him terrible and there's no grace, there's no kindness, there's no love, there's no caring for that person. They just treat them as garbage. They use Bible verses to beat people up instead of love them and help them find healing. Come on. And this is a deep concern that we should have. We love to grab a verse and it's like, oh, well, I'm not that way. And so then my heart's not good because I've got this attitude of superiority and I'm mean, I'm not gracious. And this stuff inside of me seeps out. Instead of healing, I do damage. I love how the author, actually one of my favorite Christian authors of all time, C.S. Lewis, addresses the actual area of sex in his book called Mere Christianity. I'm going to just read some pieces to you. He addresses the subject of sex, and there's no question the Bible speaks to it in a very black and white way. But then he goes on, I'm just going to read some of this to you because it's so powerful. He says, though I have had to speak at some length about sex, I want to make it as clear as I possibly can that the center of Christian morality is not here. Is not here in the area of sex. If anyone thinks, he says, that Christians regard unchastity or sexual immorality as the supreme vice, the worst sin, he's quite wrong. He says the sins of the flesh are bad, but they are the least bad of all sins. Fascinating statement. The sins of the flesh are bad, he says. In other words, you shouldn't do it. But they're the least bad of all sins. The greater sins, in the opinion of C.S. Lewis, and I believe this is exactly what Paul is teaching, are the sins of the heart. And he talks about what they are. He goes on in his book, he says, they're the pleasure of putting other people in the wrong, bossing, patronizing, backbiting, the pleasures of power, of hatred. And then he concludes this, and it's so powerful. He says, this is why a cold, self-righteous prig. Now, some of you are like, I have no idea what that is right there. You have to understand this was written quite a while ago by a British guy. And we know how terrible the Brits are, so I have to interpret that. I'm just joking, all right? I'm just joking. We don't use the word prig. We would say prude or snob or holier than thou. So just envision that. He says, this is why a cold, self-righteous prig who goes regularly to church may be far nearer to hell than a prostitute. Someone who makes their living with sexual immorality. Now, I love how he ends it. He says, but of course, it's better to be neither. But his point is made. And it's strong and it's good. And that is having a right heart is the most important thing you have in your life. It is not what rules you follow. It is not being able to say, I went this many years without doing any sins in this area. Whatever. It's not that. It is what's going on inside your heart. Is it a heart that loves like Jesus, that says you first, that cares about people supremely? I'll be honest with you, and I don't even like to make this confession, but over the years I've had an angst about this as I've been in ministry all these years, that I could so easily end up a cold, self-righteous prig. Somebody who knows Bible verses and stands in a place of authority, and instead of giving grace and love and kindness, chooses meanness and not caring. And I feared that I could be that way, and I have to confess, I'm sure there are times when I have been, and it breaks my heart that that's the case. It's just so easy to do. We religious people, we get so quick about using Bible verses and being holier than thou. Paul says over and over and over, don't forget your heart. He goes on through that chapter and he talks about different ways that we should, as I said, the do's and he talks about all kinds of things from personal stuff to family life to marriage, all of it. But through it is sort of this thread reminding us, remember your heart. Like verse 8, which says, live as children of the light. Remember who you are. Jesus said we should be like little children. Just have a heart of grace. Live as it like a child. Don't be so superior. And then finally, he gets down to it, I think, in verse 21, where he makes it so clear you can't miss it. And this is what he says. Submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. And there it is right there. There it is. Submit. You put yourself after after God, after other people. And I know some of you right now, you're like, you heard the word submit, and I lost you right there, baby. You're like, submit? Submit? I live in America. We don't submit to nobody. We're self-made. We're self-reliant. We're independent. We celebrate our independence with fireworks and hurt each other at times doing it. I don't give in. I don't submit to nobody. I understand what you're saying. You need to understand, he's not saying you give up your freedom. He's not saying you let people dominate you. He's actually talking about someone who takes far more courage and strength and power to live out than fighting for physical freedom. He's talking about where in your heart you say, I will put myself second to you. You first. You first. I care about what's happening to you at a level that puts you above me. You first. I'll tell you something, folks. For those of us who actually do this is what Jesus calls us to. He says, this is what I've done for you. I put you over me. And now I call you to do that in your little world, in your house, in your job, that person that you work with that you can't stomach. I want you to have a you first heart for them. And some of you were with me until right there. And now you're like, no, Jesus can't be saying that. If he knows that person, he knows that's not possible. Yes, it is. And that's what he calls us to. And this is going to sound crazy, but this you first spirit, this mindset, this is actually the magic of Christianity. You understand? This is the thing that made Christianity up in the world. You understand, Christianity didn't become this dominant thing that it is today, 2,000 years after what happened when Christ was crucified and rose from the dead. It didn't become what it is today because everybody that was a Christian lived following every rule perfectly, because how many people do you think have done that? None of us. It's not because we were rule followers. It was because Christ followers had this you first spirit. And that, listen, if you want to learn something, you don't conquer the world through physical force. You conquer it through spiritual force, where you put on a heart that says you first and you love people and you win their hearts. So often we think we're going to change somebody when what we can do is love them where they are and put them above us. And something happens. I don't know what it is. It's interesting because you think, how did Christianity even become what it is today? How could it possibly even be that? Why didn't it just go away? It was a small event. Yeah, thousands knew about it, but it's just not that big in the world. And things like this have happened over the ages and come and gone. You don't hear about them anymore. What changed this? Well, obviously God impacted it. But there's been a lot of research because there's a lot of questions around how did Christianity become this thing? How could it possibly happen? And it's interesting because one of the primary things that they say as they've researched this is it just has to do with how Christians would have this heart that says you first. Like when the plagues were happening and people were dying left and right, getting sick, and they were scared to death. It was just the most horrible thing. And people, they'd have somebody get sick in their home and they don't know what to do with them. They know if they keep them in the house, they're going to be exposed to them. They're going to get sick and they're going to die, and it's all horrible. So they would take them alive and sick out to the edge of the road, and they would leave them there to die, and then they would come and pick them up and take them away to burn the bodies. And they would do that, and you say how horrible that is. But the truth is they didn't know what else to do. I don't even blame them for doing that, except there were these weirdo Christians who would go down the road and pick these people who were sick and dying up in carts and put them in the cart and take them to their home and put them in their bed and love them, sometimes to their own sickness and death. But they loved these people not because they wanted to win them to Jesus or because they were trying to get them to behave a certain way. They just said, you need somebody to love you. So you first. And they brought them into their homes and they loved them. And somehow this so impacted the people who were being touched in their families that people began to come to Christ in droves. What caused Christianity up in the world was not the great preaching in churches. It was not the amazing music that they would produce. It was the people who were the church, who had you first hearts, who said, this is how Christ lived for me, and this is how he calls me to live for the world around me. And they changed the world. And this is what Christ has called us to make sure that our hearts are right. You first. Would you just say that out loud with me? You first. You first. You first. It's not get in shape. And getting in shape's good. It's not getting a good education. That's good. It's not making yourself look beautiful. And some of you spent time doing that this morning. I was going to make a bad joke there, and I'm just going to. It's like sometimes these things cross your eyes, and you go, no, that's going to go south bad. You're going to have people mad at you, so I won't make that joke. But some of you spend a lot of energy on making yourself look good and all that, and that's all good. That's great. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, I don't even know how to say it. If we don't have you first hearts, we're spinning our wheels. We're wasting our time as Christians. The thing that separates us is hearts that say, you first. Sometimes I worry. I want to be careful how I say this because I'm probably going to get in trouble any way I do it. But sometimes I worry about Christians, particularly Christians and Christians that we might be part of a demographic of. We get so strong in our opinions politically that we kind of meld our politics and our spiritual world, and we say things and do things that are so un-Christ-like. It blows my mind that people do this in the name of God, and there's no grace, there's no kindness, there's no loving heart. Can I just ask you a question? This is just for you to think about, all right? Get mad at me if you want to, and you can email me, keith@tvcweb.com. I'd be glad to get your emails. Do you really think if we vote the people in that we want, whatever that is for you, if the policies that you think are best get put into place, you really think people are going to come to Christ because of that? Do you really think that you can legislate morality or people coming to Jesus? Maybe I'm naive, but I don't think so. I think it's about you and I having hearts that say, first to God and then to people, you first. Now that's courage. Now that's something to celebrate. That's something to stand up and say, that's amazing. People with you first hearts. I think we need to check our hearts. And I know what I'm talking about here is not easy, and I'll be honest with you, I'm working so hard on this in my own life, and some days I feel like I take a step forward, and then for some reason, somehow I just slide back in and make a mess of things. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And I'm trying to be that you first person, but sometimes it's like, no, me first. I mean, I'll walk into a fast food place or something, and well, you can't walk in and order in a fast food place, but I'll drive through a fast food place or whatever, and it doesn't get done right or whatever. I am amazed at what's in me sometimes. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You ready to blow your cork over a cheeseburger? Now, what is that indicative of? The cheeseburgers ought to always be done right, or you're screwed up? Now, that's good preaching right there. And I know this stuff is hard. And I slide back sometimes, and then I get back up and I keep on going, because what I want to do is I want to get to heaven, and I want to have God look at me and go, Jeff, well done. But I'm pretty sure if I am fortunate enough to hear that, which I have a real strong question about, but if I'm fortunate enough to hear that, I'm pretty sure he's not going to follow it with, that one message you gave back in 2010, I don't think it's going to be about the Bible verses I knew or the sermons I preached or my obeying do's and don'ts. I think he's going to look at me and said, you remember when you loved that guy and you couldn't stand him, but you stepped up and you acted with courage, and you said in your heart, you first. Well done, Jeff. So you go ahead and get worked up about who gets voted in. I'm just choosing not to. Because in the end, I want to work on me. I want to work on what's going on in my heart. Now, in just a few minutes, let me just give you a couple thoughts on how I'm endeavoring to work on this heart when it comes to a you first heart. And maybe one of these might challenge you. Maybe it'll give you something to think about. But there's a couple things that I've been working on hard for quite a while now, but these things are impactful to me. I think they're making a difference. First one is that I'm endeavoring to focus on what happened because of me instead of what happened to me. So let me just describe what I mean by that. This is really about metrics in a way, about how you measure the value of life around you. You know how when people come up and say, it's happened to all of us today, as we came in and saw somebody new, hey, how you doing? And we say, of course, great, and they say great when we ask them, and blah, 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 blah. Most of the time when people say, how you doing, our mind goes immediately to what's been happening to me, how it's been going for me. Come on, is that true? If I feel good about my days, if I feel right about my life, it's about what's coming, in the direction of me. And what I'm understanding is that you first people are more about what's happening not to them, but through them. Not at them, but because of them. I'm literally endeavoring to ask myself, and you can do this at any time, like you can do it at the end of the day. I'm usually dead on my feet by 8 o'clock, and I'm brain dead, is what I mean. And so I don't do it at night because I just feel like I don't even care, But in the morning, I'll look back at the previous day and just say, what did you bring to the day? Not how did you feel about it? Do you realize how selfish that is that we do that? I do that all the time. It's like, how you doing? Oh, I'm feeling pretty good, man. Well, I'm glad you feel good. But I think it's worthwhile to ask the question, how did the day change for the people around you, your little world, because of you? What did you do that made a difference in the world around you? And this is just such a biblical thing. I've made the decision that when I go into a room, and I'm working on this and not doing well all the time, but I don't want to be the most interesting person. I don't want people just going, oh, he's so funny, he's so smart. I want to be the most interested person. Isn't that good? I read that somewhere and I thought, I wish I could steal that and have everybody think I made it up. I don't want to be the most interesting person. I want to be the most interested person. Because if I'm living you first, then I want to know. I care about you. And of course, this is absolutely threaded throughout Scripture. I mean, you look at Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, it says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others. And there's that stinking word we don't want. But what is that word? Above. You value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. He's not saying you never look to your own interests. He's not saying you never rest. Scripture's clear that we do that stuff. He's just saying you live a you first lifestyle. And so one of the ways I'm doing it is by endeavoring to measure my life not based on what's happened to me, but what's happened because of me. Because of living you first. Second thought, and this is one I've been working really hard. I try to keep remembering 3 very specific words, and the words are, I do that. And here's what I mean. When I'm offended or don't like something, whether it's like I said, in a fast food place didn't go right, and the reason I'm thinking about it is it happened just this last week with Ann in the car and 2 grandkids to see me not showing the best attitude. I actually behave better than most of the time. I mean, not most of my life, but most of the time when I get in a situation like that. But it was like I looked at it and I was just like, you are a turd, really, Can you say that in church? You are a bad boy. Okay, how's that? I'm working at reminding myself when I get angry or frustrated or critical, I see somebody and I think, well, they're just stupid or whatever, that I want these 3 words to pop into my head as quickly as possible. And so I work on this. Literally every day I work on this. I do that. I do that. Because here's the truth. I do. And I know some of you are going, well, I get mad at so-and-so, but I don't do what they're doing. I want to say this as lovingly as I know how. I understand why you're saying that, but you're wrong. Yes, you do. Maybe not that exact thing, but you do that. You do that. Look at what it says in Romans. This is a pretty powerful, really. It says, you therefore have no excuse, you who pass judgment on someone else. For at whatever point you judge another, you are condemning what? Yourself, because you who pass judgment do the same things. This is so powerful. You do the same things. Now, Paul was smart enough to know that he was talking to people who would say, well, I'm judging them because they're doing this, but that is not the same thing. Yes, it is. It is the spirit of it that he's talking about. You are broken. You make messes. You fail. You wound people. Is that true? Wow, the enthusiasm on this one is... Can I just ask again, do you screw up with any kind of regularity? Yes or no? Some of you are like, yeah, I don't know. You're screwing up right now by answering that way. Yes. Yes. You do that. You do that. And here's what I found. I found that when I say I do that, when I keep that I do that mindset, that spirit, really what happens with me is it doesn't change anything. It doesn't make what someone's offense towards me or wound or whatever okay. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean I don't have to maybe talk with them and try to process. It doesn't change the situation as much as it changes me. Because I'm less likely to be critical. I'm more likely to be forgiving because I go, oh crap, I do that. It does change you, doesn't it? Have you ever had somebody cut you off and you're like, and you give them sign language, of love and all that? And then 5 minutes later, you accidentally pull out in front of somebody and they're giving you sign language. And the next time somebody pulls out in front of you, you're like, got it. I understand. We're all screwed up. It makes a difference when I live with an I do that heart. Maybe that's something that will speak to you. Either way, if you and I want to be you first people, we have to find avenues, whether it's, I do that and measuring our life by what happens because of us. I don't know what will work for you, but this is God's high calling in your life. You live with a heart that says, what? You first. You first. You first. I'm going to pray. We'll have a moment to just process what the next step for us is. Go from there. We need your help so much, God. So come and move and work in our hearts and lives. We need you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for listening to the Thornapple Valley Church podcast. If you found this message encouraging, we invite you to share it. For more information, visit tbcweb.com.